Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us at our Keeping the Dream Alive program today and for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. We are so happy to have you here, and I'm going to try to play a beautiful rendition of a song that our wonderful alumna, Dr. Jolie Rock, recorded for us. I'm going to go to that next slide and try to play it. And if it does not work, we will just go right into our welcome. I thank you all so much for your patience and understanding.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound low as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places of God where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Good afternoon. I'm Lanya Jackson. I currently serve as the Director of Student Engagement and Inclusion in the Office of Student Engagement and Inclusion here at the University of Hartford. Thank you for joining us today. Just a quick note that we do have closed captioning available during this virtual event. If you'd like to use captions, please click on the Multimedia Viewer tab on the right side of your screen and click the Continue button. The captions will appear in the Multimedia Viewer. If you need assistance, you can use the Q&A function to ask for help. Let me first begin by thanking our esteemed alumna, Dr. Jolie Rock, for the beautiful performance of the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, to open today's program. The University of Hartford annually holds the Keeping the Dream Alive Observance to remind us all of Dr. Martin Luther King's dream of justice and equity for all. And to renew our commitment to achieving that dream, the theme of the 2021 observance is resistance, activism, and good trouble. Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. In the 57 years since the march, laws have been changed, some progress have been made, but the fight for justice continues. In 2020, we all faced a great deal of adversity, including a coronavirus that has resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of people and disproportionately impacted communities of color. The murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many others resulted in protests and calls for improved social justice. At the same time, we have also seen a rise in overt events of hate groups. 2020 was also the year in which we mourned the death of civil rights icon, Representative John Lewis, the last surviving speaker from the March on Washington and the man who urged us to get into good trouble. Continuing with today's theme, it is my pleasure to first introduce you to Joyce, Ashun Tung, Professor of English in UHeart's Hillier College. I would also like to take the opportunity to first congratulate her on her recent promotion to professor. Professor Ashun Tung is an accomplished poet and was recently awarded the African Literatures Association's Book of the Year Award in Creative Writing for her book of poetry titled Beautiful Fire. Today, she will present an original poem titled Libation for Good Trouble. Professor Joyce Ashun Tung.
Param womene, I pour libation on this threshold of a new dawn. I, woman, getting into good trouble, insisting I am not just a woman, I am human too. I invoke your presence. You forced through the doors of no return from Bimbia, Gore, and Elmina. Return now in my being, return in my seeing. Connect my words with the harmony within and without. In this virtual space, we celebrate a harvest of dreams. A rainbow nation marching from Minneapolis to Portland, from New York City to Washington, D.C., beaming, revealing lights from history to our story. Boots never broke the joints of justice. Batons never petted out passion for peace. Guns never bled us empty of our quest for freedom. So we converge again at this crossroads of memory, reminding us that words matter, words can shatter, but fragments of truth filter in broken spaces. We can reconstruct justice from the carnage of falsehoods. What we speak can maim the world. What we speak can change the world. Choice is wisdom wrapped in humane values. Here are more drops for the nation waiting our resolve. The nation tested like steel tempered, weathered the heat and blows of human hammers. 250,000 flags dance in the wind of a new day. No one can steal the sun for only their backyard. No one can milk the moon and deny others her nurture. The sky is wide enough for all birds to plow. Here are more drops. For this season of healing, to heal we must remember, he said. But beyond the dead of the viral virus, strange fruits still litter our roadsides and our homes. The names scarred our tongues: Ahmed, Brianna, George, and many more. Each name is a colored bead in a necklace too tight. We can't breathe. But Martins continues to counter the nightmare. The capacious cabinet has room for this diverse nation. We record first, vowing they can't be last. Our bloom is our strength to keep striving, to never return in fear to our darkest divide. Inclusion is equity for diversity. Waram, Wamene, my ancestors, here I am. Here are the last drops. Hope is a verb, the nation's doing word. The horn is empty. The drops soak the earth. Without surrendering, we climb, standing on MLK's mountaintop, united in action, getting into Lewis's good trouble. Knowing if one finger brought oil, it soiled the rest. In our midst, the voices continue to echo. We are Black and Americans too. We are immigrants and Americans too. We are Muslims and Americans too. We are Latino and Americans too. We shouldn't be in the margins. We are Americans too. E pluribus unum, the bedrock of a dream foretold. We thrive as one, invincible. Warem, Omene, Omene. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ashong Tang Tang. We see why your work is so highly regarded and recognized. That was simply beautiful. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Christine Grant, Executive Director for Diversity and Community Engagement at the University and Chair of the MLK Observance Planning Committee. Christine.
Thank you, Mona. This is the 16th year of the university's Keeping the Dream Alive observance. We're so pleased that so many of you have joined us this afternoon. Each year, to commemorate Dr. King's legacy, the MLK Planning Committee selects a speaker who continues to work the work of advocating and fighting for civil rights and social justice. Today's speaker is social justice activist Yusef Salaam. He will share his experience and how we can continue to actively pursue social justice and equity. We hope that today's program will serve to inspire everyone to good trouble. Now, let's get right to today's conversation with Dr. Salaam, moderated by Aaron Isaacs, U of H Dean of Students, and Hugh Hart Jr., Russell Johnson, a psychology major in the College of Arts and Sciences. Dean Isaacs will introduce Mr. Salaam. Dean Isaacs and Russell, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us for our annual observance of Dr. Martin Luther King with this year's theme of resistance, activism, and of course, getting into good trouble. Myself and Russell will be your moderators for today's conversation. The Q&A feature has been activated in WebEx for those joining us. Russell will be monitoring it and gathering your questions for our guests to answer later on in the conversation. Please feel free to use this feature throughout the program. With that, I'd like to introduce our special guest. Dr. Salaam was one of 5 boys, 4 Black, 1 Latinx, who were tried and convicted for the rape of a young woman in Central Park in 1989. They became known collectively as the Central Park Five. Salaam was 15 years old and spent more than 6 years in jail, first as a youth and then as an adult when he transferred at the age of 21. The convictions of all 5 men were overturned in 2002 on the recommendation of the Manhattan District Attorney after unidentified DNA not linked to any of the 5 was linked to a convicted murderer and serial rapist who later confessed. Since being overturned, Salaam is now known as one of the Exonerated Five. Salaam has become a family man, father, poet, activist, and inspirational speaker. He continues to utilize his platform to advocate and educate people on issues of false confessions, police brutality and misconduct, press ethics and bias, race and law, and the disparities in our American criminal justice system. In 2013, documentarians Ken and Sarah Burns released the documentary, The Central Park Five, which told of this travesty from the perspective of Salaam and his cohorts. 2014, Salaam was awarded the honorary degree and received a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016 from President Barack Obama. He was appointed to the board of the Innocence Project in 2018. In 2019, Netflix featured a 4-part series called When They See Us, based on the true story of the Central Park Five, directed by Ava DuVernay. In 2020, Dr. Salaam co-authored the novel Punching the Air with award-winning author E.B. Zaboy, which tells a moving and deeply profound story about a 16-year-old boy named Amal who fights to maintain his humanity and find truth while being incarcerated. Dr. Salaam, thank you for joining us today. And how are you doing? And welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am doing wonderful. Sun is shining outside, you know, down here in the Georgia area. But I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're very lucky to have you here today. We hope we're looking for some of that warmth and sunshine up here in the Northeast. You know, it has been fantastic, and it's great to have you here. So we have a lot to get through today. A lot of questions. I want to make sure we have time at the end for our students and some of the folks joining us to be able to ask some free-flowing questions to you. But absolutely, I'll start off with the first one. You ready to go?
Yes, let's go.
Let's do it. All right. So today we're honoring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King with a focus on resistance, activism, and getting into good trouble. I'll give a nod to John Lewis there, rest his soul. A lot of us saw resistance, activism, and getting into good trouble play out in 2020 as we dealt with the pandemic, the widening racial divide, civil unrest, and the ongoing fight for racial justice and equality. What does Dr. King, and albeit John Lewis's, message of resistance, activism, and getting into good trouble mean to you?
Really, it is the embodiment of the reality of our ancestors' wildest dreams. See, we are the seeds that they buried and forgotten that we are actually going to bloom and blossom. And the beautiful thing about it is that the conversations and the languages that were being held around the country and really around the globe used to be pinpointing things that were talking about reform more so. It was almost as if the idea was that the system was broken, that the system was alive and well. And the truth is that the system is alive and sick and is not broken, but it is operating exactly as it was designed. And so in 2020, one of the most beautiful things that happened in response to the over 400 years of oppression that we were experiencing, right? George Floyd's murder was the straw in many ways that broke the camel's back. And our ancestors' wildest dreams poured out into the streets, and the streets erupted with the words, Black Life Matters. Because what we knew, those of us who have this skin, what we knew was that when the founding fathers said, we the people, we weren't even considered full human beings. And so in this time and in this day, what we are carrying, right? The DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid that Dr. King would pass forward in the form of a baton to the current generations is to keep up the good fight, is to keep on agitating, is to make sure that we don't lose sight of the prize because we are just about to be there. Every thing that we have done is pushing us forward. And now we need to lean in. We need to lean in like never before.
I appreciate that. And as you talk about leaning in, right, and not losing, keeping our eyes on the prize. One of the things, when I was doing some research on just your background and your story, being incarcerated and being put in prison, how do you maintain that self? How do you maintain that energy moving forward? We talk about we have to sustain this. At a race relations summit at Notre Dame, you talked about an officer who asked you the question about who are you? And from that, you had a profound answer. And I think that answer connects to what you just said in terms of how do we need to push forward. A little bit more.
Well, I got to tell you, yeah, I don't.
How do we keep this energy? How do you?
Hold on for one moment. Saying something about the bandwidth was looking like it was a problem. Okay, I think I'm good to go.
Yeah.
None of my answers are scripted, so I don't remember exactly what I said. But one of the most beautiful things I think when you think about perseverance is something my mother said, and I always share this because I feel like it's important. When my mother came into the precinct to get me, every one of us who's seen When They See Us, they got the opportunity to see that. And it was as if she had a cape on her back. She was my superhero and came into that room and got me. And in the moment that she had with me, she told me that they needed me to participate in whatever it is that they were trying to do. And so the ultimate story of survival comes from you refusing to participate in your own destruction. It comes from you refusing to accept the box that they are trying to put you in, the limitation of your junk, the limitation of your beauty. They are trying to mute our voices and we are saying, turn it up. They are trying to dim our lights and we are saying, turn it up. Because the beauty of being born in the great question that was asked of me, who are you? You find out so many things, so many profound things about yourself when you begin to interrogate yourself and do a deep dive. And the beauty of being born is understanding that you were one of over 400 million different options, and you were chosen. The miracle of that is that you were born on purpose and you were born with a purpose. That is the miracle of that. And understanding that catapults you into a different space and time. You begin to understand who you are, where you are, why you are, what you are, and where, who, what, where, why, and when, right? You begin to understand those things that we learned so many years ago. And so in that question that was asked of me, I found out that I was born for this. I found out that we do not get placed on our shoulders more than we can bear. And yes, it looks like a tragedy. Yes, it looks like one of the most horrific things to go through. But the truth of the matter is that I needed to grow through that. I didn't need to just go through it. And growing through it allows you to look at it in a different way. You begin to understand and begin to scientifically deconstruct and reconstruct it all over again. And you begin to understand that the Central Park jogger case is actually not what most people think it is. It becomes a love story between God and his people. It becomes a story of a people buried alive and forgotten. It becomes a story of a criminal system of injustice placed on trial in order to produce a miracle in modern times. And the atrocity of it, the overwhelming atrocity of it, causes people to vibrate differently when they see it. And so when they see us, when it was revealed to the world, it caused so much people to have so much tremendous pain who have never been to prison themselves. Seeing the stories of the 5 of us who have been run over by the spike wheels of justice and then seeing the victory at the end. And the beautiful thing about it is that no longer are we just saying we were victorious and therefore we can just fade off into the sunset. No, we have began to use our positions, our platforms to continue to agitate, to continue to talk truth to power, to continue to let other people know how to turn up their light. You see, when I came home from prison, I was walking around with my head down inside, even though I looked like I had my head up. But there had to be a shift that I had to make. And part of that shift was remembering in a Sankofa kind of way that I was born on purpose and with a purpose. Moving in that vibration allows you to move mountains. And that's where it's at.
That is absolutely profound and powerful. And the fact that you are able to capture that with intentionality on your own experience, I think helps other people, particularly Black and brown folks, feel that confidence, which has been stripped from them in so many aspects in our daily lives. Being able to feel that you were born with a purpose. That is often not the message that we get as people of color, and some people in general too are not getting that message. So the level of intentionality and speaking about your experience to that, I think really conveys that we have a purpose here. We do belong here. Is absolutely powerful. So you mentioned as you were talking, taking what you've learned and experienced and using your platform, right? How do you continue this work? We all know criminal justice reform continues to be a battle in this country. I want to read you a statement from the Equal Justice Initiative, an organization committed to ending mass incarceration as it exists in the U.S. And I'm going to have a follow-up question to that, but I want to get your take on what is here. And on their site, they have some beautiful facts about what is happening with our system and how it is a continuation of what happened 400 years ago as we move through slavery and Jim Crow and as we get to here. Racial disparities persist at every level, from misdemeanor arrests to executions. The tough on crime policies that led to mass incarceration are rooted in the belief that Black and brown people are inherently guilty and dangerous. And that belief still drives excessive sentencing policies today. More incarceration doesn't reduce violent crime. Using prisons to deal with poverty and mental illness makes these problems worse. People leave overcrowded and violent jails and prisons more traumatized, mentally ill, and physically battered than when they went in. How has your work and experience with the Innocence Project and as one of the Exonerated Five shaped your views of America and the current state of our criminal justice system?
Wow. I want to perhaps begin in answering that question with a quote and a statement from Dr. James Baldwin. Dr. James Baldwin said, to be African American is to be American without privilege and African without memory. The worst part about the way we have been described in America, oftentimes if you turn on the news today, you hear people talk about us being immigrants. Like the totality of us, we immigrated to this country. And the truth of the matter is that they took people, they took scientists, they took brilliant people from Africa, and they enslaved us. And then they denied us the ability to look in the mirror of life as we began to experience life throughout the world. And so we look out the window and see other people's experience being reflected. And they get the opportunity, if you have the complexion for acceptance, as they say, they got the opportunity to see themselves in the mirror of life, reflecting every facet of it, whether that be social media, news, movies, superheroes, all of that. Even Black superheroes have to die, but they continue on. And so the work, I think, that is very, very important when regards to the Innocence Project has to be understood with this number. Over 2,000 people have been released from prison, exonerated through DNA evidence. DNA is the litmus test that proves whether you were there or not. Some of the people have been there for over 40 years. I'm 46. Some of the people have been there for over 40 years, and they're just finding out that they didn't do this crime that they were supposedly sentenced and guilty of. The real question is, the real reality is when they get it wrong, we suffer. In the Central Park jogger case, there was a young pregnant Latina woman who was raped and murdered after the Central Park jogger was raped and almost murdered. And the system could have gotten it right, but they were stuck with the wrong people. It was too sexy for it to be the truth. They needed this story to follow a narrative that had been given since the inception of us being freed from the so-called slave system. We see it play out with Emmett Till, and we see it continuously play out all throughout history, whether it's the Black Wall Streets or whether it's the Central Park Five. As soon as they cry, we die. And so the number that I'm talking about that I want to draw people's attention to is when I got to the adult facility, they gave me the prison number 95A1113. And every single day, every single time that they would come around every day and you would hear the words on the count on the gate. You'd had to get up, present yourself at the front of the bars, say your name and then say your number. And then you can go back to doing what you were doing. One day, one of the elders who just happened to be an original member of the Black Panther Party, who just happened to be an original member of the Black Liberation Army, he stopped me in the yard and said, "Hey, young brother, do you know what your number means?" And I had to admit I didn't. And he said, "Well, there's a 3-part serial to your number. The first part tells you when you got here. The second part tells you what time of year it was. And the third part tells you your position in line." My number was 95A1113. 95 was the year that I was sent to the big house. The next part, the time of year, is either A, B, or R. AB signifies the first whole half of the year, January through June. The second part, B, represents July through December. And R means that you got caught in the door of recidivism. You left and you came back. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Your position in line. I was the 1,113th person to enter the door. Now, that has no real significance until you realize that they gave me that number on February 27th, which is my birthday. They gave me that number. So from January 1st till February 27th, at that time of day, I was the 1,113th person to walk through the door. It wasn't even half of a year yet. Then I looked at this elder's number, and I was so saddened by what I saw. His number was like 72 something. And it would have been different had he had an R on there, because that would have meant that he left and came back. But he never came home. Many of them die there. This is what that reality is like.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salaam. My name is Russell, by the way. It's so wonderful to meet you. Thank you for joining us. But for the questions that we have rolling in, one of them says, how do you invoke the confidence your children need to face this world that wrongfully accused you and the others without becoming hardened by the pain this world abundantly throws at people of color?
part of the challenge is to remind them that they were born on purpose all the time. Never is there a moment where you can't remind them, because the whole world is screaming at them that they are worthless. And so the challenge that we have as parents, as mentors, as teachers, is to remind ourselves and also to remind those around us that we were not born a mistake. Because if we believe that we were born a mistake, we begin to move through our lives like a mistake. But when you believe you were born on purpose, and you believe that you have to find your purpose, there's an urgency that is wrapped in that reality. And the beautiful thing is that Dr. King was the one who really gave us a beautiful idea of what purpose is when he said, when you find your purpose in life, do it as if God himself called you to do it at this very moment. And instead of giving us a grand idea of what purpose could be, perhaps the president of the United States, the CEO of a corporation, a person who is 100% making it on the top of their game, they are part of the 1, 2, or 5%. He said, if your purpose in life is to be a street sweeper, sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep the streets, he said, like Beethoven composed music, like Leontine Price sang before the opera. See, it's about being excellent and unapologetically excellent. It's about believing and understanding that you were born in the right skin, with the right hair, with the right eyes and nose and lips. The whole world is telling you that you are ugly, but they're trying to look like you. And this is the beauty of us fighting back. Because the truth of the matter is that we always have been at war. And the bulk of the war is not physical. The bulk of the war is mental. If they can get your mind, then they got your body. This was one of the secrets that I found out in prison, which allowed me to be free every single day. That as long as my mind was free, my body was free, even though I was in bondage.
Thank you so much. That's very true. I agree with everything that you said. Honestly, as an older sibling myself, I've had to struggle with a lot of the things that you have spoken about, and even my little brothers. So to be able to teach and to show them that they have a purpose, that we have a purpose, that we all were born and are here for a reason. So thank you so much for that incredible message. I actually can I follow up a little bit and ask you to expand just a little bit when I say is there a way that we can get that message out to the masses, like, because there are a lot of college students or young people, Black and brown, especially our age, that I don't feel that they have that message, that they don't maybe know that message. How is it that we can kind of get that out there, get that out into the masses so that we can win this war?
Well, I think the beginning of that really has to be teaching people methods, the methodology, right? I saw a person walking around once and they had a shirt on that said, "Stop being poor." And I thought that was a pretty cruel thing to say. You know, that's like people telling people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They don't even have any boots. The truth of the matter is that there's always been a concerted effort to keep us down underneath the foot of the oppressor, to keep us in a caste system. It's been concerted because it behooves, like if you look at the 13th Amendment says, I want to get the language right. In my book, Punching the Air, co-authored by me and Evie Zaboy, we say on African American 2, while we talk, shout, whisper, Imani writes on her poster board, the 13th Amendment. Then she writes some more words. Dr. Binu nods. Y'all should know this, he says. Y'all should really understand this. Constitution of the United States of America, 13th Amendment, Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within these United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. The reason why I bring up the 13th Amendment is because slavery was so-called abolished. And then we realized that there were loopholes placed in the system that allowed slavery to continue by another name. And part of that is really examined in the book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. You see, the prison industrial complex is the now new modern cotton fields of America. And so what we have to do, and the overwhelming task that we have in front of us, is we have to disallow ourselves to be participants in the definition that they have given us of ourselves, which is that we are worthless, that we are born a mistake, that we were not born on purpose, that nobody loves us, nobody cares for us. And a lot of us, we begin to walk around in that truth. Part of the methodology that I want to get at is when I was talking to my good friend Les Brown, he wasn't necessarily talking about the same shirt that I had seen, but he was talking to me one day and he said, you know, poverty can be overcome by what you do. He said, if you look in our communities and you see what they provide us, the food that they give us, the things that we consume, the fact that we have welfare all over the place. We have TVs in our homes. They want us to watch things that are of low value. They want us to be able to consume things that will imprint on our brains a reality that is not true. And so even in the era of social media, instead of us really being about the work, we gotta, in the words of the Quran, it says, فَإِنَّمَا الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Surely after difficulty, there is relief. إِنَّمَا الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Most certainly after difficulty, there is relief, right? And so many of us take this relief time. And when we do these memes that we see, I don't know, I can't remember the names of them, of people walking around doing the walk or the silhouette challenge. And I challenge people, like others people have said, to be unified, because our unity is more powerful than an atomic bomb. Because see, even in that verse in the Quran, it still says right after that, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَّا رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب, which means, so when you are free from your immediate task, still labor hard, continue working, continue pressing forward. We have the overwhelming challenge to refuse to accept any definition that doesn't give us life. Because by accepting that definition, they have just defined for us a truth that is not, that is absolutely untrue. And so part of the thing that's beautiful, I think, especially with college students, is I tell them to do this, right? If you can close your eyes and imagine yourself at your graduation, and I want you to imagine it with all kinds of imagery that you can muster. And I want you to see yourself in your mind's eye, taking that tassel and moving it from one side of the hat to the next as the announcer says, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the class of, and whatever that class of is. This is where the beauty happens. Marry that vision, which what you think it will feel like to be in the room being celebrated. Your loved ones are there, your family are there, your friends are there. Perhaps it's post-COVID, maybe it's not. But I want you to imagine it, and I want you to imagine what it will feel like, the victory of being a victor as opposed to a victim. This is the secret to what they call the law of attraction. Because once you have imagined something, the imagination is the precursor to what's to come. And so if you are consuming poor information and you go to sleep dreaming about poor information, they have just arrested your development. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, like these phones that we have, right? This is called a smartphone, but the phone is not smart. It's just a phone. What you do with it makes it a smartphone. And I'm not saying we always have to be on our post, but stay on point. Just like my mother used to tell me, when you're walking around in the streets of New York in particular, you can't have both headphones on your ear. One headphone has to be off and the other one is on. Especially in the era that I grew up in, 70s and the 80s and the 90s, because you had to be able to duck when somebody said duck. People were being killed indiscriminately. And of course, now we see what's going on with the systems that are supposed to protect and serve us. But this is part of the secret of how we can allow ourselves to rise above the gravitational pull of everything negative trying to keep us down. We have to do the work. And a lot of the work is not that difficult. But once we begin the process, it gets easier and easier. They talk about vision boards in the same way. You can have a vision board, or you can have a vision board in your mind. I had to have a vision board in my mind, because in prison, if they saw something like that, they might rip it up. So you had to put it in a place that they couldn't get it. You had to keep it in your mind. But the beautiful thing about being free is that if you have even the opportunity to encourage yourself, you can write little reminders on sticky notes, put it up in your mirror, put it next to your bed, put it in places that as you get up and begin your day, instead of turning on the news, which may upset your mood, just look at that. For 5 to 15 minutes, allow yourself to meditate on the positive as opposed to the negative. And then start your day. Still check the weather, still make sure that you're going down the right roads and the roads aren't blocked. You got to be on point. But utilize what we have in order to understand that we have to be on purpose. The beautiful thing about folks like Dr. King and John Lewis and countless others is that they were all on assignment. Some of us are on assignment. Some of us don't have the opportunity to kick our feet up. Sometimes those of us who do, just remember, like my good friend Raymond Santana always says, keep your boxing gloves next to your bed. You never know when you got to put them on.
Dr. Salaam, this has been beautiful. I mean, I'm going through waves of just emotion, appreciation, understanding, valuing. And I know based on the chat we have here, some of the questions that are being asked, other people are seeing themselves in the words that you're saying, and they're digesting them. One of the questions in here that I think, I'd like to ask you, from Edasec, I'm so glad a Black Muslim like myself is doing such great work. How do I incorporate faith and activism? Can you speak a little more to that?
I think the beautiful thing is that it's one and the same, right? You can't divorce yourself. Like in America, we've been taught that there's a separation of so-called church and state. The truth of the matter is that everything matters, right? We learned that perhaps in one of the harshest ways. The past 4 years, people were thinking it's just politics. Matter of fact, the then president said, what do you got to lose? A lot of people lost everything. Some people lost their lives. People were being told, everybody's going to get COVID sooner or later. Why put a face mask on? To protect ourselves and to protect others. And more importantly, to protect our loved ones, because we may not know. We may just be a carrier. We may not be exhibiting any symptoms, And then we go to our mother's house, our grandmother's house, our grandfather's house. And next thing we know, they get sick because we think that it's not really that serious because the president said so. But see, I have a deeper connection with the president because my connection was that 2 weeks after we were accused, not 2 weeks after we started trial, not 2 hours after we started trial, not 2 days after we started trial, 2 weeks after we were accused of one of the most heinous crimes that you can go to prison for, Donald Trump took out a full-page ad and it ran in almost all of New York City's major newspapers, calling for the reinstatement of the death penalty specifically for our case. You see, there is never a moment. The system wants you to believe, you know, like there's a verse in the Quran that alludes to something like act. We too are acting. And I thought about that for a moment. And I said, you know, I'm married. I have 10 beautiful children. It's a blended family. We have 7 girls and we have 3 boys. But imagine if I was an actor and I said to my wife, hey, listen, babe, I got to kiss the person they want me to do a love scene. Is it a fake kiss if you really kiss? No, it's a real kiss, right? And so I'm saying that because in our workings, we tend to want to separate our faith from everything else. And the truth of the matter is, if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, whatever faith you follow, that is the navigation system inside of yourself. That is what allows you to autocorrect as you are moving throughout life. Because one day you'll look up and you'll say to yourself, oh my goodness, how did I get all of this mold on the counter? You will never know that the mold is there and growing until it begins to turn colors. And so our job is to continuously clean up our hearts. Our job is not to be angels, but our job is to make sure that as we move throughout life, we can try to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. And we can continue to move in better and better ways. And the beautiful thing about spirituality is that you know, if you really know, that the greater you challenge yourself to be spiritually on point, the greater the challenges you will receive. It is almost as if God is saying, okay, you ready to work out? I got you. This is your partner in this. And God is going to, okay, I think I could push some of the weight up. And God going to say, you got more, you got it. You can put another 45 plates, not 45 pounds, but another 45 plates on the bar. And you doubt yourself and realize that you can do it and you make it. And you become strengthened by it because life is about that. It's about creating the survivors. It's about chiseling self. It's about stepping into the mold of being. You see, when I was in prison, I found out that my name means God will increase the teacher with justice and peace. Now, I found this out 6 months into my prison bid. Imagine wow. Like the light bulb went off in my head. I'm reading the Quran, I'm reading the Bible, I'm hearing about this young man named Joseph, or Yusef, if you want to choose which name, who was sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit. And I thought, I'm reading my story. This story is in the Bible. This story is in the Quran. A young man sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit, and not just any crime, the crime that they sent him to prison for was rape. And I'm saying that the mold of being able to realize that this person that became a prophet of God, this mold that you can begin to try to step into is always there. But you have to be able to fit yourself into the mold. You have to be able to figure out, oh, I might have to chisel this part, chisel that part to really make it a bespoke fit. you know? And that's where the beauty is at, because when you wear a bespoke suit, whether you are male or female, and you look good in it, man, you tell yourself, wow, I didn't know I clean up real nice. Start posting stuff on social media, clean up nice, hashtag, you know, but never separate church and state. Because if you really, really want to get deep, the separation of church and state allows for man to make law. And at one point in time, it was legal in this country to own people. It was legal in this country to dehumanize the people you owned. Part of the conversation wrapped around the Confederate flag is that this flag is a representation of states' rights. But that is only part of the statement. That representation of states' rights is states' rights to what? To own people. And so when you saw in Charlottesville people shouting as they marched with tiki torches, they were shouting things like blood and soil. What was that about? It was about the war that they lost that allowed us to be seen by the color, I think it's the color of law, as people, but not by the letter of law. This is why we still see the atrocious way that they respond to our color of skin. Drop the weapon and we have our hands up with no weapon. Our skin becomes weaponized. We can never be disarmed. The other day I saw a video and they had a young woman and her whole family, the children, were told to lay on the ground. It looked like slave catchers. And that's exactly how that is exactly as how I described it. And so it's important to understand that they want what they want, but we have to understand who we are. We can never keep our eyes off the prize.
Dr. Salaam, I would spend the rest of my afternoon, I believe our panelists and people would too, with you and hearing more about your thoughts on where we are as a society, a community, and as people. But unfortunately, we are run on time, and we'll have to conclude this. But I want to say thank you for your message about worth, value, being born with a purpose, continuing to motivate yourself and others to press forward. I think that message is resounding. I think that is something we all can learn and reflect on as we go about 2021 and about our daily lives. But I just want to say thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it. It has been a journey. It has been a beautiful journey that you've taken us on in opening up your world and experiences to us. So I wanted to say thank you again for attending and coming here. And I also want to say thank you to the panelists. Special thanks to Chris Grant for putting this program on, and the folks who put the Observance of Martin Luther King together. We appreciate all the great work. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And I just want to say again, Dr. Salaam, thank you again. I hope you come back. I hope we can have you back. We would love to have you back at the University of Hartford. But this concludes our conversation. Everyone, please be well and stay healthy. Take care.
My pleasure.